Okay, so again, I think we'll get started. I do hear some background noise, so as in past classes, I'm gonna shut those mics down as soon as we get started. I do want to thank you guys for joining this. This is our first night of electronic bouts, so hopefully, you know, those of you that haven't run electronic bouts, you learn a little bit about that. For those of you that have, maybe we can make sure we're, you know, got you guys doing things the correct way, answer some questions that you might have. Electronic bouts is really just another word, and it just means that you're going to have a computer at each mat and score the bouts. So of course, then the need for printed bout sheets is eliminated. You'll still, of course, need to print brackets and those sorts of things, but it does eliminate on a lot of that printing and data entry as well. So if anybody has questions right off the bat, now will probably be the time to do it. Otherwise, I am going to shut those mics down, and just so we can make sure that the sound quality is good. So are there any questions before we get going? As usual, then I'll stick around afterwards, open them back up, answer any questions that you guys have. Again, understand that that chat feature is there, so if you need something urgently, go ahead and use that. Otherwise, you know, just maybe make a note and we'll get to it at the end. So I'll go ahead and shut those mics down now and we'll get started. Okay, well, we are with the kind of getting going here with the course, electronic bouts for individual tournaments. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be working from several tournaments tonight, just to kind of cover different formats of tournaments and different ways that you're assigning the mats and things like that. And so I'm going to start here with this Varsity Tournaments 101. So the tournament we're going to be working with quite a bit is a predefined tournament. And so, but for those of you that work with more open tournaments, most of these steps are going to carry over. And I do have a couple of open tournaments here that I'll work with to kind of show you some of those differences. And so the first thing we'll do, I guess just to get started, we're kind of at a point now where I've set up my tournament. I have wrestlers in here. I created brackets. Everything is kind of going. So again, you guys have either been through the courses or you've run tournaments. You kind of know where we're at. But again, to focus on the electronic bouts setup, in your to-do list, you'll notice that I do have a few new items in here. That there's a couple of items. Actually, there aren't items here, and I did this intentionally. So when you're going to use electronic bouts, what we want to do is come over into the Setup menu, and I'm going to go to Settings. And when I do this, at the bottom, you'll see that there's this item for Use Electronic Bouts, and I set that to Yes. And I flipped it back to No, hoping I'd remember I did. But I did that with a purpose, of course. Now when I go to my to-do list, you'll see that I have a couple of new items here. I have an electronic setup, which is right here. Of course, and then there's a couple of other items here along the way that I'll be pointing out as we get going too as well. The other thing in this settings page is this mat assignment depth, and I'm going to flip that in just a second, and I'll show you a point in the to-do list where it's going to do that. But the mat assignment depth is going to be set to not applicable at this point, and we'll get to that in just a second. But really the first thing, it's a really good idea, especially the first few times through electronic bouts, in the to-do list that you go ahead and you open up this electronic setup. It's going to walk you through a lot of the items that we're going through here tonight. And we also have a video out there that focuses specifically on that. But one of the things we need to do for sure is set up a worker password. So I'm going to go into Setup and go to Users and then go to Workers. So a lot of you maybe use worker passwords. Sometimes you're maybe just sharing your admin login, which is fine too. The worker password is a limited access login, so it's not going to give your workers all of the rights that you have as the administrator. But I'm simply going to click on Add Worker, and you can name this whatever you want. I'm just going to go worker, and I'm going to use my name as worker, and then I'm just going to call it password. You're probably going to want something a little stronger than that, but for the purpose of our demo here tonight, I'll just add it as that. So again, I would log in with worker and password. So you might have something, much more secure, maybe your school mascot, something like that, whatever that case might be. And then the next thing that I would do in that list is what I referred to just a minute ago. I'm going to go into my setup and into settings. And then at the bottom here again, I flip this electronic bouts to yes. But I'm going to be using in this scenario with our varsity tournament, with our predefined tournament, I'm going to use a call to mat system. And then this mat assignment depth I can set as deep as I want. I'm going to set it to 3. And what 3 means is that I'm going to have a mat on the match, or a match on the mat, 1 on deck and 1 in the hole. If I had 2, of course, then I would just have that 1 on deck. If I went deeper, then I would have more matches in line at that mat. But I'm going to use 3. Personally, I think 3 is a really good number. There's reasons to go either higher or lower than that, but 3, if you're not sure, is a pretty good place to start. So now I have my mat assignment depth. I do want to show you as well that I do have a number scheme. So if I go into my number schemes here, I do have a couple of number schemes. I had a lower weights, upper weights. This is actually from another class that we taught earlier. I'm just applying this all number scheme, and it's basically just numbering all of my matches from 1 on out. And if I go to my bout schedule, you'll see that I have all these brackets created, and I started. Actually, I take that back. I must have used the upper and lower one, which is just fine for our demo purposes as well. So if I go to one of these, so I'm going to sort my lower weights one. Say I started with 101, and then my upper weight number scheme, I started with 501. So that's kind of how the number schemes went, and either way would be just fine. I don't think that's going to mess us up. Again, we use this tournament for lots of teaching purposes, but in your case, you're going to have whatever number scheme you have in there. And we do recommend to use a number scheme in most cases, especially if you're running electronic bouts. It is very, helpful, and it helps keep bouts in order when you see them on the mat side controllers as well as on the mat assignment display. So it's a good idea to apply those number schemes. You're also going to want to be sure that you have your mats added. So if you're running tournaments and you don't typically put mats in, like if you're just using a bullpen system or you're assigning them manually and running paper bout sheets, it's possible you haven't added mats here. I've added mats 1 through 4, so you're going to want to do that. And of course, if you need to add those, you would just click here. I will point out that adding the word mat ahead of it, which you've heard me say before, is a good idea, just to make sure that you're clear when people see that in other places. They know that that number 1 isn't a random number 1, and it's in fact has this label in front of it, so they know it's mat 1. And then the other thing I want to do is I'll click on from this mats page, I'm going to go on assignment schemes, and you'll notice now that I don't have any schemes added. If it's your first time with electronic bouts, you've maybe never done this before, but what you want to do is think of a mat assignment scheme, and it's different than a number scheme, and sometimes these two get confused, but you want to think of a mat assignment scheme as kind of your stack of bout sheets, and then you're going to specify which bouts go kind of into each stack. So, and I'll show you an example here in just a minute, but again, when you're thinking of your normal tournament that you run on paper, you have that stack of bout sheets. You're having a runner run those bout sheets out to a mat, so they run on a particular mat. What you're really doing is you're taking that runner away, and instead of a bout sheet, you're doing this kind of electronic bout sheet that our system is going to send to that mat. So again, if you think of electronic bouts and these mat assignment schemes as bout sheets, sometimes that's helpful. So I could add a scheme right here. If I clicked Add Scheme, I could add a scheme that's called All, and then I might pick all weights and all rounds. And what that's really going to do is that's going to send, and I can add it and then delete it, this all scheme that's going to include all weights and all rounds. It's going to send that stack about, it's one big stack of bout sheets, and I'm just going to keep pulling off the top every time there's an open place on a mat. And that's just going to be first available all day. So that's a pretty simple scheme. You know, a lot of cases that works. But you can do some creative things with your schemes too. So what I want to do is I might have 2 gyms that I'm running this tournament in. So maybe there's an upper gym and a lower gym. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to click Add Scheme, and I'm going to call this Upper Gym. Oop, forgot the word gym. And again, you might have a lot of different ways that you want to run this. But I'm going to say in the upper gym, I'm actually going to put my upper weights. So I'm going to go 52. I'm going to click 52, and I'm going to hold my Shift key and hit 285, and it's going to highlight 52 through heavyweight here. I am going to use all the rounds, and then I click Add. And so now what I really have is all day in the upper gym, I'm going to run my upper weights in that upper gym. And then of course I would add my lower gym, and then in this case I would go 106 through 45. And again, I'm just using my shift key to highlight everything in between the two that I selected. I'll go to all rounds and then add that scheme as well. So you see that I have my two schemes here. I'm not even actually going to use this all scheme right now, but again, just know that this would be the most simple scheme that would be first available with one stack about sheets. What I've really done now is I've created two stack about sheets, one for my upper gym including these weights, and one for my lower gym including these weights. Again, that's probably not how you're running, but there's lots of scenarios to run through. If you have something real specific or maybe detailed, we're happy to help out. So make sure you contact us during the day when we can give you a hand heading into this. And then what I'll do is I have these schemes kind of created. I have these two stacks about sheets. When I go back to mats now, you'll notice I have this new box that gets added, and it gets added as soon as I add a scheme here. So you've probably seen this mats page a lot before. Maybe you haven't seen this. Once you add a mat assignment scheme, you'll go ahead and then you'll see this item right here. So then what I probably do is, let's say mats 1 and 2, those are my upper gym mats, and then maybe mats 3 and 4 are my lower gym mats. So I really have is half my bouts going to the upper gym, half going to the lower gym. And then all I'm going to do now that I have those created, I'm sending this upper gym stack about sheets, and it's going basically every other match on the upper gym, and the same is true for the lower gym. And then all I'm going to do is come here, I'm going to click this load mats. The system's going to ask me to type load, and then I'm going to click OK. It takes a minute, and I can check this to see where they're being assigned, and they should be being assigned now because I did that. If I go into my operating and I go to my bout detail. So again, operating, I go to bout detail, and now you'll see here that at 106, again, these are my lower weights, and these were mats 1 through 3. I think I said these were the lower gym. They're going 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. As you recall, I specified that I'm going 3 deep. So at mat 3, I have this bout, and this bout, and of course on mat 4, this one, this one, and this one. If I scroll down, because of the way that my number scheme was created when I had those two number schemes, and I can't see those all right now, but if I do a limit right here of $9.99, now when I scroll down, if I go far enough and I get to my next scheme, now you'll see that when I get to my 152s, those are assigned on mats 1 and 2, just the same as I did before. As a side note, or maybe even not a side note, but if I ever needed to change an assignment, I can do that with this drop down. So let's say, for instance, that this mat 2, I don't know, maybe his mom is working the table at mat 1. I can go ahead and I can change that assignment. I would click here. It's going to ask me to type change, and that would update. I think I'm going to leave it just like it is, but this is how you would manually assign those bouts. So our system will continue to assign these all the way through the end of your tournament in this case, or until that stack of bout sheets you created runs out. And then at that point, in our case, it would be done with the tournament. Or maybe in a more complex system, we might have to go back to our mats page in some cases, and I might have to select a different scheme here. So that's basically how that works in, I guess, a varsity type tournament, a predefined tournament, when we're running a call to mat system. That's pretty typical. The one other thing that you'll see, so I'm going to go actually into my Open Tournaments 102 now. So this is a different tournament. This is an open tournament, and in this case, we're also going to simulate that we're running a call to mat system. So we're still assigning them, some sort of first come, first serve type basis. It's a call to mat system. But if I go in this tournament, just to kind of show you what this is like, this is one where I have a whole bunch of different groups. Again, this is an open tournament. It's an open format, and I've got all these different groups. So this might be more of a youth tournament, maybe a freestyle or Greco, whatever the case might be. I'm going to come in here again, and I'm going to make sure that I'm set up. If I go to settings, I think, okay, so I have this set to yes. I also have my assignment depth set to 3 as well. So that way you would make sure that you have done already. If I come to, I want to show you the number scheme real quick too, again, just because we're flipping back and forth between tournaments. This would be a pretty good setup for this situation. This is kind of a youth tournament, and in my case, I just took the first 4 groups. I think there were 3 more down here, and maybe it was the female groups, the women's groups, or girls maybe it was. But just for our sake, I'm just taking 4 divisions. So this could be your age groups, it could be your grades, whatever the case might be. But what I did is I added a number scheme, and my 04s, 05s, I'm starting with 1001, 02s, 03s, 2001, and so on down the line. And then I'm going to kind of assign the mats in a similar way. So what I'm going to do, of course, to create my mat assignment schemes, again, the mat assignment schemes being kind of that stack of bout sheets that we're going to do electronically. I come in my operating menu and click on mats. You'll notice in this tournament, because it's bigger, I'm going to run 8 mats. So I already have these added. If you didn't have these, you would, of course, use the Add Mat button. But if I click on Assignment Schemes now, again, I don't have any assignment schemes here, but I do want to add them. And so just to kind of give you an overview what I think I would do in my tournament here, and this might be similar to what you do, or perhaps it's not, but I'm actually going to create an assignment scheme for each of my age groups. So I'm going to start by adding a scheme, and I'm going to call this one 04, 05, and then I'm just going to select that group, and I'm going to pick all rounds again. As a side note, if you didn't select all rounds here, it would default to everything, and I'm going to add that one. And so of course then I'm going to add one for the rest of my group. So I'm just going to quickly roll through this. I'm going to do my 02s, 03s, select that group. And again, think of these as stacks of bout sheets. So every bout sheet from 04, 05, that's one stack. 02, 03, there's another stack. I'm going to add 2 more schemes. Next one's going to be, must be 00 and 01. Take that group. The names here don't matter at all, but if they are meaningful, then it's really easy to make sure you have them assigned correctly. And maybe a better way to think of that, if they're not meaningful, it's really easy to mess them up. So take your time in naming these, and of course I did this to match kind of how my groups were numbered. So 04, 05, I've got all of them here. They should match to what my age groups are. So now again what I've done is I'm creating these 4 stacks of bout sheets. And now what I'm going to do is come to mats, and now again I have these assignments. And so in this scenario, we're going to say that not all of these groups have the same number of wrestlers. And the truth is, I don't even know how many wrestlers are in these groups. But as you know, you're always probably going to have some groups that are bigger than others. You know, and I'm going to say that, let's say my 04, 05, that's my smallest group. So I just want to assign those to 1 mat. On the other hand, my 02s, 03s, they're a little bigger. So I'm going to go to mat 2 and go 02, 03, and I'm also going to have 02, 03 on mat 3. So really I have 1 mat for this group. This group's a little bigger. I have 2 mats. My next group, which is the 2000, 2001s, that's my largest group. So I'm going to send those to 3 mats because I want to kind of even out these matches and kind of level out how many bouts are going to each mat. And then my last group is similar in size to this first one, and so that's how I have it. So again, I'm sending all the 04s, 05s to mat 1. Again, that's my small group. My big group I'm having on 3 mats, and then the other 2 have 2 mats. And so, and you can do that however you want, but this is probably pretty common because you're going to have different size groups. Of course, then I'm going to come here, I'm going to load the mats, type load, and then those mats get loaded up. And I can look at that again if I go into my operating menu and go to bout detail. And so for this, if I take a look, you'll see on mat 1, and I can sort this. So let's look. I want to look at my 04s, 05s. These are only my 04s, 05s. I have them 3 deep on mat 1. So in this, when this match gets done and there's a bout entered here, this next bout will get assigned to mat 1 on this mat. If I look at my, let's do, I think this was my big group. Yeah, there we go. So now you see I have 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. So let's say in this next bout, that's the next one to get scheduled. Let's say mat 5 has a quick pin. This bout right here would get assigned to mat 5. It's always going to keep those 3 deep. Again, if I wanted to manually assign one, or if I wanted to change it, I would just use this drop down to do so. And that's really all there is to assigning bouts to mats and creating those assignment schemes with multiple age groups. There's one other scenario that comes up, and what I'm going to show you is in this Open Tournaments 101. And for those of you that were in this class, you'll recall that if I go to my groups and divisions, if I go to mats and then I assign mats, in this case, I built all these brackets, but I'm assigning these brackets to mats for the whole day. So some of you may be running that way as well. So these guys aren't getting assigned in a first come, first serve or a call to mat system. These are getting assigned, this bracket's going to be on this mat for the whole day. So in this case, I would have already assigned these. I would probably, just as a reminder here, for number schemes, I would probably have my mat 1 starting with 101, my mat 2 with 201, and so on. You don't have to. I think that's a really great idea, actually. I think that's a good tip for those of you that run this way and don't do that. I think it would be worth a shot. And then basically that's all there is to this. I don't have to go in and create, if I go to my mats page, I don't have to create any assignment schemes. There's no need to. Our system is going to look at this page and it's going to say, okay, all of these bouts are going to mat 1, all of these bouts are going to mat 2. And then when you go to your mat side controller, which we're actually going to go through in just a minute, the bouts are going to show 10 deep on that controller. And then your workers are just going to pick the top bout and continue working on. And it's going to keep those 10 deep, of course, until you're running out of bouts, and then they'll just kind of run out from there. So again, think of that stack of bout sheets from all of these charts. They're all going to be sitting on that table, and they're all going to be seen on that mat side controller. So those are kind of 3 different ways that you might assign bouts to mats. So again, a little different varsity tournaments perhaps because you only have kind of that one group. So that's when we did that. The open, where you have multiple age groups, and then of course if you're assigning bouts to mats. Any of those 3 methods work pretty well, equally well I should say, but just a little bit different in how you would do that. So I'm going to stay in this Open Tournaments 101. The next thing we want to do is that stack of bout sheets is there. Electronically, we're sending those out to your table workers. They're going to log into their controllers and see it. Now we want to specify the period lengths. And that's probably most, I shouldn't say, there's a couple of places where that's really going to come in handy. If you have multiple age groups that are running different lengths, that's obviously one thing that you want to do. If you also have perhaps consolation matches that might be running a different length, then we can also set that as well. So I'm going to look at Open Tournaments 101, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over into bracket types. So I go to my Setup menu, and if I go to bracket types, there's this Advanced Settings, and it won't matter which, you'll need to do all of them, but let's just say I want to start with this 2-man best of 3. I click Advanced Settings, and there's this item here for period lengths. I select my division, which I have several here, but I'm going to go to this division right here, and I'm going to enter my period lengths in this division. So and you'll notice here it's comma separated by comma separated period times in seconds. So let's say these guys are going 1, 1, 1. I'll go 60, comma 60, comma 60. And that's probably true for all of my rounds. And so a good hint here, because this is a little bit time intensive, I'm going to highlight it, and then I'm going to do a Control C, which of course you can't see me do. But then that's going to copy it. If I click in the next one and I Control V, that pastes it. I click in the next box, I Control V, and that pastes it. You could type those in, but again, that's a nice little tip. I click Save, and I go to my next age group. And let's say, for instance, these are going, let's say they're 1.5 minute periods. I would, of course, go 90, comma 90, comma 90. I'll highlight what I have there, Control C to copy, Control V, and Control V. I save that, and then I quickly set up that. And again, you could do the same for any of your age groups. So if these were going longer, I could do that. If they're all 1 minute, I could set those as well. But you do have to go through, if I go to Setup, Bracket Types, I do have to do each of the bracket types, and I also have to do, as we showed under period lengths, I do have to do each of the divisions too. So it's very specific. Again, a little expensive there, but definitely something you want to do. And the reason for this is that way your table workers and your referees, they don't have to go and change any times. When they get a bout at their mat, it's going to come up with the exact time they're supposed to have based on all this information that you've entered here. In varsity tournaments, I'm just going to come over here because this is probably a good example that you run into quite a bit. If I go to setup and bracket types, like we know now that we need to do, very common in varsity or predefined tournaments to just have one bracket type. I'm going to go to advanced settings. In predefined tournaments, it's actually under bout text. Hopefully that's not too confusing, but that's just, I guess, the way it is. If I click on bout text, you'll see two items here. The bout text is actually what would show up printed on a bout sheet. So many of you have maybe made that change. But let's say this is a high school tournament. I'm going to come to the period lengths, and I'm going to go 120, 120, 120, which we know now is a 2-2-2 match. And I'm going to say, okay, so all of my placement matches, I'm going to copy. I'm going to paste, paste, paste. And again, I'm just Control-Ving there. And of course, all my championship rounds are going to go 2-2-2. But now in my consolations, by rule, and probably by rule that some of these placement matches probably should be changed too, but this one's going to go 1-2-2. So we have a short first period. So I'm going to go 60, 120, 120. And so again, there's a 1 minute first period and then 2-2. So that's a 5 minute match. So I go C or Control-C and then Control-V and Control-V. And of course I would save that. In this case, I only have to do it this one time. So did have a question come in asking about overtime. Yeah, when you change overtime, or when you change period lengths here, the overtime is always going to be 1-1-1. And if you needed to change that within your tournament, maybe it's a little kids tournament or something, that one actually you'd have to change manually. And when we get to the controller in just a couple minutes, I'll show you how you can change that too. So, and if I forget as I go rolling through, be sure to ask me. But to answer the question, overtime will always stay that one. I shouldn't say 1-1-1. It'll stay that 1 minute first period, and then your tiebreakers from there. So that's how you change your period lengths, and that's of course really handy, and it saves you a lot. It saves your workers a lot of time and your referees a lot of time out on the mats. The next thing I want to do is go to my mat assignment display. And so this is actually the item or the thing that you're going to use to display how wrestlers are getting assigned to mats. So rather than, and you can have an announcer, and I'll show you that process in a minute, but a lot of tournaments run, I guess, announcer lists, or, for the most part. What a mat assignment display is, it's going to show all of your matches that have been assigned to mats. And we kind of, I showed you on the about detail how that happens, and we created those schemes. And when we get there, the green, it's going to show green, the matches that are on a mat. It's going to show yellow, the ones that are on deck. And then you're also going to have white for everything else. And then the matches get removed as soon as there's a match, a result entered. So I did have a question. Can you send a response to Cheryl's question to all? Let me just, so there's a question in the chats. I'll probably, let me answer that kind of at the end again. And then of course this is on video. And if you need me to chat it to you so you guys have that, I can do that after we're off the air a little bit there too, so to speak. So I'm going to keep moving through here. I'm going to come into operating, and I'm going to go to mat assignment display. And when I come right here, I'm going to open this up. I have some of this set up already. So I made this screen big. Again, it opens in a new window, so you'll see it like this. I'm going to make it nice and big so you can see it. Yours is going to come out blank, so there's going to be nothing in these columns. Just for time's sake, I did go ahead and kind of pre-populate a lot of this. What I have here is basically you're going to use these drop downs, and you're going to select what you want to be displayed. And so you'll notice that here in my columns, which you're going to see in just a minute, I have bout number, and then mat, and then weight. So those are going to be specific to that bout. And then I have the wrestler's first name and last name, and then a team abbreviation. Then I have the wrestler 2, or the other wrestlers, first name, last name, and team. And then I added mat to the other side just to kind of help keep things in line. So that's kind of the basics. So if you just go ahead and pick these, if you went down and then you clicked Save Settings and then went to View Display, you would see something like this, only I have a few other things included now. You're always going to get this, and I forgot about this pop-up, but you're always going to get this message that says you can only display clock and score information on this display if you're running on a local server. That doesn't mean that you can't use this display. It just means that you couldn't put a match time and a current score unless you're running on a local server. Doesn't really affect many people. Sometimes big state tournaments and stuff will run with that sort of information. Disregard this stuff up at the top. I know it's hard to because it's kind of flashing at you, but most of you are just going to see this information right here, right when you start out. And I'll show you how I added the other things. But just to basically go through this, here's our bout number. So about 501 on mat 1. It's a 152 pound match. We've got this C Brown. Again, we took one character. Ooh, I forgot to tell you about that. Let me go back. In this, I forgot to tell you about this. This is the number of characters that I'm going to display. And you might want to play with this just a little bit. On my mats, I know that I only have 4 characters because I have MAT and a space and then a number. So I have that's a bout number. Mat, I have 5. So bout numbers, I know I'm in the thousands. That's only 4 mat. And you can go on and kind of adjust these as you see fit. And then if I go to view it again, you'll see that I just put the first initial of the wrestler, their last name, and then the abbreviation for their school. So this is the matchup. I put the mat over on this side just because personally, it's my personal preference. It kind of helps this guy over here kind of see. So if I'm down in here, it's a long ways to look across to this mat number. So that's how that works. You'll also notice that on here, I have this thing called recent results. These, of course, are team scores, and then these are announcements. So if I go back, what I'm going to do is just show you kind of how this all updates here. There's a few other items that you want to take a look at. One of them that I want to do is the sort. Right now I have that sorting by mat. I could sort it by bout number if I wanted to, or on the on-deck status. So I might put all the on-decks first. So that's completely up to you. Maybe I'll switch it and go by bout number, just so you can see that differently. I'm not going to limit how many I have per mat. I'm going to fit on here, no problem. This test displays, sometimes this comes up. If I put test displays on here, I can flip this to yes if I don't have bouts created already. And I can just kind of lay that out, and it gives kind of fake random data. If you're ever not seeing your bouts on here, check this first, because sometimes you'll have this flip to yes, and then you actually see some kind of dummy data in there, and you don't see your actual bouts. I'm going to display all mats and all weights. If in my case I had 2 different display screens, I could possibly select just mats 1 and 2 to display, and I would have that say, and I can't remember now, but maybe that was in my upper gym, I think where mats 1 and 2. I might have another display screen in my lower gym. And again, of course, most of you probably know this, but this computer that I have displaying this is going to be hooked up to a projector at some point. And then I am going to get to the announcer process in just a minute as we get through here. That question came up there, but I'll get to that in just a minute. The scroll you might want to mess around with. Scroll 1 pixel every 0.05 seconds. That's a real small, like smooth scroll. If you want something choppier, you might want to spread that out, but that's one you want to just kind of play around with. And I actually created a margin here. My font size, I could maybe make that a little bigger. Again, this is all going to be dependent on what you want and kind of your scenario. I'm putting the last 10 results. These are going to be bouts, and I place those at 0 pixels. I'm also taking the top 10 team scores, and I move that down to 40 pixels. And then I have some announcements that I'm using in here. So if I save this and I view this again, you'll see that it probably got a little bigger, sure enough, but you still see where these are here. So I want to show you exactly how that gets populated. So if I go back, I'm going to do 2 things. You saw the one for announcements. If I come into my setup menu, you'll see that I have this item for announcements, and I can add an announcement in here. And maybe I want to put something like, I don't know, t-shirts are only $10 or something. Could be anything. Could be concessions. It could be parking. Whatever you want for announcements, you can add that in there. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to. Do I need to add some bouts here? Let's just leave it as it is. If I go back now and open my mat assignment display, and I click, if I can get to it, view display. Now you'll see that this announcements, you'll see that the t-shirts are in there. The recent results, I haven't run any matches. I can actually do that real quick. Another quick teaching thing here. If I go to the operations and I go to enter bouts, maybe I'll just go, I don't know, maybe my first round, so maximum match ID of 8. And that just takes a minute, so it's kind of randomly populating some matches there. I'm going to come back here. I'll go back. So now this is kind of in the scenario where maybe you're partway through your tournament. And now if you notice that the recent results, I can change how fast that scrolls and things like that, but you'll notice there's some pretty cool things you can do with that there. Showing my team scores, my announcements. Maybe you want to move one of these down here, and I'm just clicking the right click and going back. In this announcement one, maybe I want to move that down. I would align it maybe at, I'm taking a guess here, let's say 400. And if now I view that display, yeah, it's going to be right in the middle of that. So of course I wouldn't want it there. I'd maybe move it down to like 600 to get it down here. But you'll see how you can display quite a bit of information there. Of course, these settings are going to depend, completely on, your computer, your screen, how big it is, your size of your venue and things like that. But this is a really kind of a powerful tool for you to use. I'm going to go back. I'm just going to move this guy. Let's try 600 just so it's out of the way, because I'm going to show you with the announcer process here in just a minute. Hopefully that's out of the way. Yeah, there you go. So now those announcements are on the bottom. So I'm just going to minimize this. I did have a question coming in about the announcer process. It's actually right at the point that we're at. So there's two ways that your announcer can kind of work from here. And I guess we refer to these as kind of the old way or the new way. The old way of doing things, and this is a good method, a lot of people still use it, but I can go into operating and use the bout detail. And so if I go to the bout detail, it's going to show again where these wrestlers are, where they're assigned to. Kind of a good way for that announcer is to just make this a new window. So if I right click on it, and then I'm going to take this frame and I'm going to open it in a new window. You wouldn't have to do this, but it's kind of nice because then you can make it nice and big or whatever, and then you're not bothering anybody else. You're going to want to come over to this setting right here that says abbreviated names, because you'll see that right now it's got the first initial, but your announcer probably wants their whole name. I'm just going to click there and go to show full names, and you'll see that this updates right here. And then your announcer now can work from this page. All he'll have to do, he or she will have to do, is when I read Travis Ball and Sam Holmes on mat 4, and I can just mark it as printed. So of course I didn't print it, but that's a way for he or she to remember where they're at. So I just go through after I read them, and I come right here. This page won't refresh on its own, so if I just click the go, that's going to keep refreshing. So once a result is entered here, that one's going to go away. So that's one way to do this. So that's kind of how you mark them as called or read or printed, whatever the case might be, however you want to refer to that. So again, we refer to that as the old way, not in a negative term, but we do think that there's a newer and perhaps better way. And that is, of course, on our mat assignment display. So I'm going to come back to our mat assignment display. And again, that was this right here. I would probably remove a lot of this stuff off the announcer because that might be distracting. But maybe he wants to read team scores every now and then, which is just fine. So I'm just going to right click and go back so I can get to these parameters. And what I'm going to do in here is I'm just going to add one more field down here that's called, if I scroll down a little bit, it's called announcer box. And then I don't think it matters how many characters, so I'm just going to put 1. But now you see everything else will be the same. Again, I could remove some of this information, the recent results and things like that if I wanted to. But now when I view that display, you'll see that there's this box over here that I can use. So again, I could sort this in different ways. Right now it's by bout number. That might not make sense to me. I might sort this by on-deck status or even by mat. Again, your announcer will probably have a preference as to how they want to do that. But once I read this, now when I read this, and again, I would probably want to, if I go back, I would probably want to put more characters in that first name now. So maybe I want 12 there too. I view it. So now I have the whole names probably. And then once he reads it, then he can go, okay, there's the first call for this guy. And the handy part about this is, let's say that now I can't, these wrestlers doesn't show up. I can come back and say, I read it again, that's his second call. And maybe on the third call he's disqualified or something along those lines. But that's a nice way for you to keep track there. So again, 2 ways for your announcers to announce results. So in a lot of ways, if you have a projection screen and this is up, the announcer process is, I guess, much less necessary and important. But again, two good ways for you to announce your wrestlers to mats. So next step in this is going to be logging into the mat side controllers. Again, we sent those bout sheets out there. Now, of course, we have to score them. And so I'm going to use I'm going to go out to I'm just on our testing site, and I'm going to log into my tournament as a worker. So again, I mentioned before that we set up a worker password, and that's really how you should have your workers at your mats logging in. You don't want them into everything that you can do as an administrator. So I'm going to go to this Varsity 101. If I can find it, there it is. And again, I'm on the testing site, but I'm going to log in as a tournament worker. I'm just going to change that, and I think we had worker, and then our password was password. And then they're going to open this up. And now you'll notice as you go through these menus, of course, they're very limited. Not very limited, but definitely limited compared to yours as the tournament director. And so all I'm going to do, each table is going to log in like this. They're going to come to operating and go to electronic bouts. I'm going to pick my wrestling style, and in our case it's folk style. If it was something different, you certainly could do that. I'm going to click open. And so now this is my controller that I'm going to be working from right here. And that opened a little slowly, but that'll pop right open, and I'll just make it bigger for you. So this is the controller that I'll be working from. And then all I'm going to do is select my mat. So I come here, and let's say I'm on mat 2. I click mat 2, and now I have those 3 bouts that are assigned to mat 2. Again, I'm 3 deep. If you were working in that tournament where you assign brackets to mats, you would see 10 of them here because that's the max. Those workers are always going to work top down. They can skip. Let's say that this match isn't there, one of those wrestlers isn't there. The referee could decide to hold that and go on to the next one. They can click whatever one they want. But these are going to come in order based on their bout number. And I'll just click the next one. So I click bout 557, and this brings up my bout. And this is going to be how you score those. I want to point a couple things out before we score a match. You'll notice that I have my wrestlers right here. I can change the color of the wrestler. So let's say they show up at the mat and this guy's supposed to be green. The referee calls him green. If I flip him to green, you'll see they both change, and now everything is kind of updated. The other kind of handy item you're going to see here is this microphone. So let's say Cody hasn't showed up at the mat. What I can do is click on this microphone, and it brings open the mat chat, which you can also find over in this left menu. And it's pre-populated. It says, please call Cody Brown from the city to our mat. And it's going to be sent from mat 2, and our system knows where they're logged in from. And then I click send, and that gets sent. And you'll see that I did one earlier in testing. But if I'm my head table worker, so if I come back now, and again, I apologize for jumping around so much, but I'm in Varsity 101. So now if I'm working at my head table, and I go ahead and I open up my chat, which is in the left menu, and I go to online chat right here. And then I want to click this one that says open up a line of chat with my table workers. You might have your announcer having this open, or somebody that can get to a microphone. And you'll notice now that I can see this here. And it says, please call Cody. And then I might respond back, just called him. And I can send that back to mat 2. And I send it. And then now it shows that. Now, again, jumping around, if I come back to where I was on my mat side controller, if I refresh this, you'll see now I have a message back from the head table. I'm working this table. I don't have to get up. I don't have to send somebody. The head table knows they can call them, and we can kind of keep moving. So hopefully that speeds up the flow of your tournament. So that's kind of a quick item there. But if I go back to my match now, here's Cody. Let's say he showed up. All I'm going to do is start my clock. I'm going to click on start. I can also do this by pressing the down arrow, starting and stopping it that way. But you can just start and stop the clock like this. And let's say that Cody gets a takedown, and then the red gets a reversal, and they go out of bounds, so I stop the clock. So that's basically what you're going to do. Your workers are just going to click on the items for the correct color. They're not going to use these plus or minuses unless they have to. We really want to find out, and these are feeding stats programs in a lot of cases. And let's say that, for instance, this reversal, the referee says, no, actually that was an escape. Really easy to make changes. I just click reversal, and that brings me some changes. I can change the entry, which I'm going to do in just a minute, but I could also switch the color, and that's what the switch means. I could delete it altogether. I could insert something above it, like maybe there's a caution or a warning or something like that, or I could cancel it. But in my case, I want to change it. I click change, and then I come over here and I say instead of a reversal is actually an escape, and I click escape. You'll see that it gets added here in the central column. It's kind of your running total and your running, I guess, bout sheet from your match, and it also updates the score. I would go ahead and click start, and let's say I click start and I go, oh, stop, the referee, maybe I clicked that by accident. I can use this little item, this little arrow right here. I click there and it takes me back to the last time that I started and stopped the clock, and that kind of helps. If I need to tick it up and down a couple of seconds, I can use these little arrows, or I can highlight in here and put it back to whatever I wanted it to, and then I can start and run from there. Oh, I would need to hit, so if I go 55 and I hit set, and then now I go from there. Now it starts. So I'll just keep running. So that's how, and the question came up about overtime. The same issue applies here. If I needed to change a time, I could always do it from here. I could just change that how I wanted to. When that period runs out, I'll click next. A lot of people are going to be tempted to use these. We don't want you using those unless you have to. If I click next, maybe red deferred, and then green took bottom, and now I'm in my second period, I would start the clock and run again, and then work right on through it. You'll notice that if I go next, there's a choice there, and now I'm in my third period. If this match is tied and I click next, it's bringing me to my 1 minute overtime period. And then if I go next again, of course, it's giving me the choice, brings me to my 30-second first tiebreaker. So again, the overtime should be set for you in there. Anytime a match ends, I'm always going to come over to result. Okay, but before I do that, the summary is also a handy feature. If I click summary, this is going to bring me again my bout sheet. So the referee or the coach might want to see that, and that's just fine. I can always click match to get back to my current match. Again, this match, let's say it ended in a pin or whatever the case might be. Regardless of what the end outcome is, I always want to click result. Our system is going to try and calculate based on what you've already entered who the winner is, and it's usually going to be right, but there are some cases where maybe there's a defensive pin or something along those lines. If I need to change it, I can change it to the other guy. I can change the win type here if I need to, change the time of the pin and the score or anything like that. And I click save result, and then now my table worker comes back. They click the next bout, and they're off and running. So they're just kind of off and running from there, and that's all really there is to it. There's a couple other items over here. If you have specific questions, definitely we can answer those. But for the most part, those are the items that you're going to use. So the big keys here: start and stop the clock. You're going to click next to get to the next period. The summary is over here, so I can see the summary of the match, and then always click result whenever a match ends. So those are kind of the main items there in the controller. I'm actually going to keep this open in case there are questions when we come back to it. And then just a couple more items, I guess, along the way. If I'm in my varsity tournament and I'm the administrator, like you guys are, if I need to make changes, kind of from a tournament management standpoint, if I go to my bout schedule, I'm going to monitor from here. You'll see, oh, I have some bouts entered in here, and we're going along the way. If I need to make a change in a bracket, I can easily do that just like I normally would. I could click on a bracket and open it. If I need to make a change here, let's say that this score was wrong, I can click on that one. Maybe that was 11, or maybe there's even a different winner. That wouldn't even matter. And I save that. Oh, can't do that. Let's say it was 15. And then now that updates the bracket there to see how we did. So that's basically how you would go through that. It's possible that you would manually assign bouts, which we talked about from this bout detail page, where you can change that too. So, and you just kind of work on through your tournament. The truth is, when you're running electronically, from a tournament administration standpoint, once you're rolling, it makes your job a whole lot easier. So hopefully that's the case, and that's what you're finding out too. So. Okay, so that's kind of electronic bouts running through everything, kind of from start to finish, from setup to running through your tournament. Again, the video of this course is going to be online. I'll send out those links tomorrow, and you can always find that from the Track Wrestling University page. We do have more courses that we just added, so the schedule got updated. So those of you interested in courses coming up, be sure to check that out. And then, of course, as always, use our ticket system if you have other questions. I do want to thank you guys, and I do this in every course, but we do appreciate the time that you guys are putting in. We definitely know those of you that are taking the time to do these courses, and we also know that you're the folks out there that run really successful tournaments, and we appreciate the efforts that you're putting in. So at this point, I am going to open up the mics. There were a couple of chats that came in, and I apologize. Once I get going and talking there, sometimes I miss those when they come in. But I am going to open the mics up now, and we'll open it up for questions. Okay, so the mics are open. As always, those of you that kind of have to go, or if you've had everything, kind of covered, you're welcome to go ahead and sign out whenever you need to. Those of you that have questions, I will stick around to answer those right now.
How many bouts per hour does track wrestling electronic bouts average?
So that would be kind of hard to answer. A lot that will depend on match length, maybe how fast the matches are going, size of match, those sort of things. I don't know that I could answer that. The one thing I will point out is we do have a feature within any tournament, when you're running electronic bouts, it's pretty accurate. But if you go in your setup menu and go to settings, I don't think I have this selected as yes, but there's something in here called a pairing report. So it's right in the middle there. If I flip that to yes, and I'm not going to be able to give you any real good data here just because of the way that we set this up. But now you'll notice that in here I have this, oh, it's in the left menu, I'm sorry. Now I'm going to have this item called pairing report. If I click on that, I can add an entry, and I would name it whatever I wanted. Maybe this would be morning session or something. And then I would pick whatever rounds, how many mats I'm using, and then the time frame that I'm kind of sampling from, and our system will kind of do the math for you. So it's going to tell you you're running, 7.86 bouts per hour or something like that. I think running electronic bouts and assigning them with our system, I think speeds things up. But again, so there's a lot of variables there, so I don't know that I can give you a definite answer there.
Okay, that's fine.
So that pairing report, even on the testing site, you can kind of play around with that. Even if you go back to an old tournament that you guys have run, if you've run it, especially electronically, you can go ahead and get an idea of how many bouts you're averaging an hour. And again, that's kind of hidden. Not a lot of people use it, but certainly people that want that information, it's a nice tool to have.
I'd like to change our wait time on the bout between wrestlers.
Sure. So a couple items. I'll show you how to change that. The one thing, if you have a bout come up at a controller, so again, if I open up my controller, this for you right now either. But if I'm at my matches page and I load up this bout, if this bout is not ready to go, like you'll notice that this one's set for any time because it's the first round of the tournament. If this bout isn't ready to go, there'll be a pop-up that comes up for the workers that says, they can't go till whatever the time is. They can still run it. Our system isn't going to prohibit it, but it's definitely going to alert that worker so they can tell the referee, and then it's up to the referee. But to change that time, it's actually, if I go into my left menu, into print documents, it's actually on the bout sheet setting. So if I go to bout sheets, it's going to be right here. I can, it's the minimum break time. And the easiest way to change that is just click advanced settings. And then I could change this, and maybe this is going to be 30 minutes. I just change that, save that, and then our system also recognizes that. So
okay,
that's how you, yep, you're welcome. Again, keep in mind that oh, go right ahead.
If we've already sent, or a match has already been sent to the table, and maybe there's an injury on that mat, can we retrieve those matches that have been sent and move them to the other mat?
Sure. So you would do that right from your bout detail, and that's probably the most common time where you need to take a mat off a match off a mat. So there's probably a couple steps that you would do in that case. So I would probably first go to mats, and then let's say it was on mat 1, I would probably unassign this just so that the system doesn't continue to send mats there. Otherwise, again, it's going to keep doing that. So I would probably unassign that. And then I would go back to bout detail. And then let's say that I can't remember what mat I was just referring to, but let's say I wanted to move this bout. I would just change this from mat 3 maybe to mat 4. Type change. And then now it'll go away on the controller for mat 3, and it will show up on mat 4. So this bout detail is always where you'll go if you want to change where a bout is assigned to. And that's true even in your question. If it's already assigned there, this is still the place where you would come to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Shane, in some of our bigger tournaments, we want to use displays at each mat. So let's pretend we're running 18 mats. We're going to have a display at each mat.
Sure.
So then kids who are kind of filing in there know where they are, so they stop, bothering the table help.
Yeah,
and they can just sort of see it because it'll be facing them so that they can see, okay, I'm the next one, the third down, whatever.
Gotcha.
Do I need to run a separate machine, or is there a way to run that kind of viewing screen
Sure.
off of the same machine?
It's possible. Let me think about this. It's possible you could do it from right where they're running their controller. You would just open a new window. So actually, if you extended your desktop, so here's what you could do. You would either have a separate computer there to display it, if that were, feasible, or you'll notice that when I go to in my operating menu and do the mat assignment display, this opens in a new window.
Yep.
And so what you do then is, and I actually have 2 monitors, so I would actually go in and my settings on my computer, I would extend that desktop, and then I would take this, and on my case, I have another monitor that I'm looking at right now, but I basically drag it off and put it on that other monitor.
Gotcha.
I'll bring it back so you can see it. And then what you would do then is you would filter this. If I'm on mat 1, I would select only to show mat 1's bouts.
Okay, beautiful.
And then I would see only mat 1's bouts. Again, you can, again, I showed a lot of stuff on here just to show you.
It just,
this one's pretty ugly.
Cut the hardware that I need in half, so that's good.
Yeah. Test that first. I don't see a reason why it wouldn't work, though. This page continues to update, so it should be just fine. So there's no reason to update it and keep refreshing it.
I guess one's a technical question and one's more of a logistics question. The technical question is, so we're going to operate basically a hotspot, cellular hotspot as a backup in the event that, because the majority of the tournaments we run are operating off of Wi-Fi that sometimes is not as stable as we'd like it to be.
Sure.
But we're not going to run that for all of the mat controllers, just for the main computer. So in your videos on the electronic controller, you indicated they could go to the history and work from the bouts that are sort of already stacked for them. Is that the correct procedure that you would say is to go with? Yeah,
so if there were a situation where the internet were to go down, that's your big issue, right? If you lose something.
Right.
So anything that's entered is going to be saved. So that'll be saved like on our servers where you could retrieve it.
Okay.
And there is this history. Do I still have one open? Sure. There is this history that's going to kind of go back to the matches and the bouts that whatever was there. So there's a way to go back and get that. If you're down for a long time, the fact of the matter is you do need some sort of internet connection to run matches.
Right.
So you can get by for a short time, but without that internet connection, you won't be able to run electronically.
Unless you're ready to print immediately.
Unless you're ready to print, which if you're from your head table, you should be able to do that. Like if you said you had a hotspot, you'd want to test all that too. Typically, hotspots aren't quite as don't have quite as much horsepower. They're limited as to how many devices can connect.
Right.
But of course that varies, and you would know of that device better than I would. So, yep.
I guess that's my other question you kind of covered.
Okay, Shane, we're running a round-robin tournament, and how do we set our tiebreaker system, or how do we look at your tiebreaker system if we like that?
Sure. So again, if you're ever not seeing something, you'll notice that I have it here, just because we covered that in one of the other class that we did this. But if I go into tie breaking, if I'm not seeing it, I would go to settings and flip that for it. But in tie breaking, this is where it shows. And you can either move these up and down. It's kind of a hierarchy. So the one at the top is going to come in first and work its way on down. You can deselect or select whichever ones you want. So that's how you would adjust those.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. One other point, too. If you do make moves on this, be sure to save the order. There is a save function on this page. So, but that is, in fact, how you would do that.
Matt?
Yes.
When we have our wrestling tournament, we have 3 mats going. But when we come down to finals, we take it down to 2 mats. What's the best way to do the bout sheets? We put all the consolation matches on one mat and all the championships on another. What's the best way to do that? Mat assignment.
Matt, did she want you to answer that one, or should I take that for you?
Go for it.
So the way to handle that, this is Shane. The way to handle that best would be to set up another scheme for that. And if you go to your rounds page and break these out, so for instance, and there's another course. The rounds page is kind of a whole. I guess there's a lot you can do with this. But what I would do, and I'll just show you an example. I would add a round right here for, like, I'm going to call this championship. I think I spelled that correctly. And then what I would do is I'm going to take the match ID, which I think in this one is 28. I might have that wrong. Let me check. Yeah, first place match. And then I would remove it. And again, I'm going to go quickly through this just because it's, not really what we're covering tonight, but this is how you would do it. I would save that. So what I've really done now is I've added a round to my tournament. You could do this with your 3rd, 5th, and 7th. This example that I'm going to show you is just kind of breaking out that first place match. So let's say we're running everything through, and then we're just going to run the finals on, like a stage or central mat or whatever the case might be. So now if I come back, so now I have this rounds page. Notice it's called championship. Now when I come in to set up my schemes, so again I go to mats, and then I go to my assignment schemes, I would add a scheme now, and I would call this the same, championships. And I would pick all weights, and then now what I would do is instead of picking all the rounds, I would just pick that championship round and click add.
Okay.
And then now when I go to my mats, you'll notice that I have this championships scheme that I could choose. The one thing that's off here, only because I kind of added this at the last minute, when I go to my schemes, in the rounds, when I created these, I would exclude the championship, of course.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. Yep, you're welcome. Any other questions that have come up? I know it's a lot of information on one, I guess, small piece of track wrestling, but once you guys get the hang of electronic bouts, you'll never go back to paper. We'll almost guarantee it.
Shane, I got a question here.
Sure.
It's not related to the electronic bouts, though. I got your message today about all that registering stuff.
Okay.
Garrett emailed me and said I need to go into.
Let's do this. Let's do this when we finish recording and everybody kind of signs out. I'll hang on the line and we can cover that. Just you and I. Does that sound okay?
Sounds good.
Yep. I'll be happy to stick around. So, was there anybody else that had questions related to the course tonight?
Nope.
Okay. Well. Yeah, you're welcome, guys. And if that's the case, I'll stop the recording again. Be sure to let me know. Call in, let us know, send tickets if you have questions on this. get out to the testing site. There's a lot of kind of cool stuff you can do with electronic bouts and that mat assignment display.
Oh, one last question, Shane. If I move a tournament over to the testing site, can I then use a different computer to log in as a worker on the testing site?
Sure.
How do I manage that? How do I direct somebody? So when I select which server it's on, it's going to say it's on to go to testing and then search for the tournament there?
Yeah, so when you're in the testing environment, so this is where I went through here, so let me do this. So if you look at what I got here, I'm just going to go back to our home page. So I'm on the testing site right now. If I wasn't there, in the track menu under servers, I'll select whatever server I want to log into. So if it was your real tournament and you're really on one, you could go to one. Otherwise, the truth is, if you pick a tournament off Trackwrestling, our system is going to direct you so you're all on the same server, and that's really the key piece. In most cases, it doesn't matter what server you're on, but we want everybody from the same tournament on that same server, just for sync reasons and things like that. But your question about testing, I would just click Trackwrestling testing, and then I would come and search. So now you'll notice I'm on the testing site, and you can see it here too. But I would just go here and search my tournament.
So as an example, I could move, like after this weekend's tournament, I can move that over to testing and train a whole bunch of mat-side people on that tournament because it's already populated, and I can just kind of restart it and say, hey, we're going to do this from 9 to 10 or 11 tomorrow and whatever, log in and play.
You bet.
So they can do that on the testing server.
Absolutely. And then the other thing, too, is on the testing site, in this operations menu, depending on what format you're working with, you can either add random wrestlers, and that's what I actually did for these kind of practice tournaments, so just create fake data. Or if you're in a varsity tournament, it's called, I'm not there.
Fill weights or whatever.
It's called fill unknowns, exactly. Yep, that's correct.
Look at that, I knew something. Huh.
You did. You're right on. But yeah, you could do that. Testing site's a great place. You can always go back to old tournaments in there.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Shane.
Yep. You bet.
Shane.
Yes.
I have a question dealing with something else. Do you want me to write a ticket, or should I ask you right now?
Let's hold off. I think somebody else, I don't know who that was kind of speaking in, but I'm going to get that one. So if you want to hang on, you can. Otherwise, you can either shoot a ticket in, or if you want to call in tonight, you could certainly do that. Actually, we have somebody on tonight answering that call too. So, or you can call in tomorrow when we're all on. So.
Well, I don't mind waiting now if you want to answer the other question.
Okay. So I think what I'll do then, folks, I'm going to stop the recording just so others don't have to listen to us blabber on. But I'll stick around and answer those questions. But again, thank you very much, guys, for joining tonight and for taking the time to learn a little more about electronic bouts.